Welcome to What the Health? Where anything health is fair game as we tackle the trends and bust the myths about health and wellness. Here are your hosts, Dr. Dan and Angela Toro.
And welcome to another episode of What the Health. I am here, Dr. Dan, with my co-host,
Angela Toro Family Chiropractic. Should I do the little disclaimer before we get started?
So, as always.
You guys know the drill at this point. We're here to talk about health. We are in no way giving individualized medical advice. Always talk to your trusted healthcare provider before making any changes to your specific routine. So with that out of the way, I know this is one you've really been, no pun intended, dying to talk about.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Ching. So we're going to talk about aging today and why anti-aging, the term anti-aging is bullshit. Is that one of the ones we're allowed to say?
I think we're allowed to say that.
We're allowed to say that one? Okay. We have a certain number of cuss words we're allowed to utilize, but I think we've been pretty good.
We have been pretty good. Are we allowed to say them all up for one episode? I don't know.
I'll probably get shot down for that. But anyway, why anti-aging is BS and graceful aging. How do we gracefully age? Because here's the deal. All of us are aging, right? It's something that,
We're all older today than we were yesterday.
Yes. The old adage, death and taxes are the two certainties in life. I always say death and change are the two certainties because you can choose not to pay your taxes, but we're not going to get into that. That's
a whole different type of podcast.
That's right. And now we're going to start giving tax advice. No, that is a joke. But yeah, so aging, this is I really think it's such a unifying topic because it's something that we all do on a daily basis and we can't avoid it. So, and I think that partly goes to why, and I heard this, years ago from a mentor of mine, about why he didn't like the term anti-aging. And it just really rang true with me because you're right, aging is a natural, normal process. So again, when we come from our salutogenic side of things and how we look at life, how we frame our life to be more healthy, well, aging is a very natural, normal process. So why would we try and fight it or go against it? Exactly. But I think it gets to the point of what are people truly trying to do?
Yeah, what are people afraid of? What are people...
Correct.
What is the part of aging that makes people want the anti?
Correct, yeah. So why are they trying to avoid aging? And I think if you look at it, actually was doing, a little bit of, reading up on this topic before the podcast. But, there's a whole new, I guess...
Field of study.
Field of study would be, I guess, the way to put it, but called geroscience, which is really gerontology science. And it's really a field of study that kind of looks at aging and really aging's relationship to the risk factors of disease and, and how those are very closely correlated. So aging tends to be and it is really the largest risk factor when it comes to chronic illness. Diabetes, heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, obesity, all of these are correlated very, very closely with aging. So the older you get, tends to be the more chronic illness that is associated with that. So really the field of geroscience is talking about, well, how do we decrease the impact of that, aging and how it relates to illness. And so, it comes down to, over the years, we hear about these scientists talk about lifespan and how do we increase lifespan. And interestingly enough, lifespan across the world has been going up over the last several decades, but really the United States has kind of taken a little bit of a backslide over the last decade. So it's like my kids' generation is going to live, at least in the United States, is going to live not quite as long as my generation did. At least that's what the statistics show now. I think that could be changed, and we'll get into some of that today. But at the end of the day, we all know of people who lived a very, very long, healthful life, and they just they ended up passing, dying of old age. And I think that's the fear that people have is, at least in the United States, aging is so closely associated with chronic illness that people want to avoid that. It's not that they want to avoid the aging, but they want to avoid the chronic illness that is closely associated with aging.
Yeah, what's the first thing you picture when you hear aging? For me, at least, what I used to picture is a nursing home.
Yeah.
That you hear aging or old person, that's sort of the visual.
Walking with a cane, wheelchair, maybe rolling O2, next to some oxygen tank next to them.
That's maybe it's because I volunteered in a nursing home when I was growing up, and it was that visual is just like burned in my mind. And
the visual and the smell.
Yes, it's like being in a hospital. It's just not. But
and it's not a pleasant place, right?
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, again, literally, most of the people that are in there are on their deathbed, and they are just they're not living; they're dying at a slow. Pace. And so I think that's where this discussion comes from, because, so much of what we see in practice are people who are, they're at a crossroads in their life. They're having some sort of symptom flare up, an ache or a pain that hasn't been there before, or maybe it has been and it's getting worse, or they recognize that they're not able to do something. They're hitting 40s, 50s, 60s, and now they're not able to do something that they were able to do a decade ago. And so it kind of puts that little bit of fear of the unknown and what's coming. And a lot of times what I try and help people understand is, what is the difference between natural, healthy, chronological, or what we like to call graceful aging in the office versus what is an accelerated or a premature aging process? Because I think that's where the illness comes into play. When your body starts to degenerate, decompose, age at an accelerated rate, that's where I think we make the connection of, okay, aging, illness, and that last decade or 15, 20 years of life, not living in a very healthy, vital state. So what I ended up doing, at least for the purpose of this episode, because this is this could be a whole weekend. This is a career for some people.
Oh yeah.
But this could be a whole weekend seminar of diving into that, and that's something that we're looking at planning in our office as a whole series on how do we gracefully age, how do we promote graceful aging, so that you don't have to be fearful of the nursing home, fearful of the wheelchair, fearful of all the chronic illness that is associated with that. And I think it doesn't tend to get on our minds until probably about 30s, 40s, when we start maybe seeing an aging parent or grandparent. But really what it comes down to is, there are things that we can instill in our children and grandchildren that are going to help prevent them from an accelerated aging, a rapidly aging process, and help them age gracefully. And I think that's really the key in helping us differentiate what is an accelerated or a not healthy rate of aging versus a healthy, graceful state.
Yeah,
of
and you bring up a great point where, we don't tend to think about aging until we're at that point. But it's actually people our age, it's people in their 30s that should be thinking about, how do you want your later years to look?
Yes.
Because now is, well, even earlier than now, but that, early on in your life is the time to set yourself up for that graceful aging. You can't kind of beat yourself up for 50, 60 years and then, in your 60s hope to magically turn it all around. Not that you can't make changes, but you can't wait until you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s and then think about how you want to spend the last years of your life. You really do want to be thinking about that earlier on. And I think that's sometimes people do, that's so far away, until, like you said, those all of a sudden like, ooh, things hurt that didn't used to hurt, or things are harder that didn't used to be that hard.
Yeah, it's a simple saying that I remember hearing, years ago, that people, especially in the Western culture, spend their adult years, they spend their health to grow their wealth, and then they have to spend their wealth, the final third of their life, they have to spend that wealth to hopefully regain or maintain their health.
Manage.
So
very true.
Yeah, and it's you again, I just made the connection when you were talking about that, thinking about it now. It's like, we try and instill a sense of, financial responsibility. And, you shouldn't be waiting until retirement to start thinking about saving
you don't
money.
Want to think about, your retirement plan when you're 55.
Exactly.
You're thinking about it now. Like, it's this same exact thing.
Yes.
What physical state and mental and emotional state do you want to be in when you're in those later years of life?
Yes.
You gotta invest in that now. It's the exact same thing. We talk about that all the time. You have to invest in your health the same way you invest in for financial security. You have to invest in your health for, if you want that long-term security as well.
Yeah, and so I think that's the purpose of this episode. And I think one of the easiest ways to look at this is, study, just like we talk about, you don't want to go to a doctor or a healthcare provider that is unhealthy themselves, because even though maybe the information is great, they're not the greatest example of how to express and exemplify the information they're preaching. Which is why I think the two of us try and do our best to stay in a good, healthy state.
Yeah.
And certainly
practice what we preach.
Yeah, and certainly, we go up and down in cycles at times, but I think
we're human. That's
exactly
so do our patients.
That's called the human condition. But again, I think we have a good grasp on it, and we're able to to get a hold of it,
get back on track,
and get back on track when we know we're off kilter. But so it makes sense that if we're going to discuss aging, we should probably go to the people who do it the best.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, if you have not heard of this, there are literally a population of people that are called centenarians. Those are people who live to be 100 or older, and centenarians have actually been studied by I'm going to forget the gentleman's name, but he did this documentary for the National Geographic. It was back in probably about a decade ago now, and he found that there were these people in what he called blue zones, and these individuals. Or these zones, and it's across the world. It's not like any one particular country. There was a zone in every continent across the world, but these zones had the highest concentration of centenarians in this particular area. And so they went and they studied these individuals, and they wanted to come up with, well, what are the similarities? What are the characteristics of these people, of these cultures? Because it's obviously not a single culture or a single way of life, but there had to be some sort of similarities. And so they came up with what was known as the Power Nine, the Power of Nine. And these were 9 characteristics that they found were very similar across all of these zones. And I don't have written down, you can Google blue zones, and you'll see a lot of different information pop up about it. I think there's some documentaries, there's some YouTube things that have shown up, but you can go and do some of this research. But I thought that you and I could have a conversation about what is the Power of Nine and how might it relate to the to reaching a century old, but again, doing so in a healthful state.
Yeah.
And I think we could argue that if you make it to 100, you have probably been pretty healthy throughout your life, because I know very few people that are in a very, very sickly state. I mean, we've even unfortunately seen it in our grandparents, right? Our dad's parents made it to about 80, 84. But again, their last decade of life was not healthy at all. And, some would even argue their last 2 decades of life. And you can look back over their life and how it played out to kind of see how it led to where they were in that final decade. And then even our mom's parents, on our maternal side, they both hit 90. So, thank God. I mean, they've been with us this long, and it's been beautiful to see them. But I'd say the last 5 years, we saw a pretty rapid decline in the quality of life. And so there's definitely some chronic illness there, in both of them, that, may or may not be there in the centenarians who have made it, a decade beyond 90 and some, well into their, 105, 110.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guessing with these 9 things we're talking about, that it's not medical intervention that's keeping
there's a good point.
these people to 100. Because that's the thing is we have, we talk about it all the time. The medical system has
time and place.
Yes, it has a time and place, and it has kept a lot of people alive that otherwise would not be with us. Our grandfather being one of them.
Yeah.
So absolutely, time and place for it. But again, then we're talking about, are we just prolonging years?
Correct.
Versus prolonging the quality? Because that's the other thing too. When we're looking at these, populations where it's not just the random outliers every once in a while make it to 100, but when you have these dense populations of people making it to that age, again, you're seeing a lifestyle, you're seeing a healthy, graceful aging. They're naturally making it to that age, which our bodies are definitely designed to do if we take care of them. But there's a big difference between naturally making it to that age where you're still able to function and versus
artificially
being kept to that age by means of machines and pills and interventions. And at some point you do kind of have to wonder, it's that quality versus quantity. Right?
You're not just adding years to life, you're adding life to your years.
Exactly.
And that's what's key in this discussion here is really, it comes down to quality of life, lifespan versus health span, as we mentioned just before we started talking on this episode. But the difference between the chronological age and the physiological age, biological age. And again, unfortunately, most of us in the Western world, especially the United States, are on this path of rapid degeneration, rapid aging acceleration, rather than healthy aging well into our 90s and 100s and beyond. So what are these? People are already saying like, all right, shut up, Dr. Dan Angela. Let's talk to So what's the secret ingredient? We have a patient who always asks, like, what's the secret sauce? What are you hiding from me? What's the secret to this? So we're going to share with you these 9 points, the power of 9 that these blue zones came up with, and run some discussion around there, and how it has, again, I think every one of these we've talked about in some way or another, in our practice and to someone individually. So the first one, which I found really interesting, movement.
Man, didn't somebody do a podcast on that recently? The detriments of our sedentary lifestyle. What do you know?
But interestingly enough, though, they went a step further, and it's not just movement, but it's natural movement. Which I thought I love that. Yeah, I thought that was really key because we've had this conversation. I started a new program recently where I'm trying to do 2 45-minute workouts a day. And one of them is supposed to be outside. So if you're familiar with this program, I'm not going to go into that. But part of it is doing 2 45-minute workouts a day, so 90 minutes of activity. But one of those workouts has to be outside. So I have essentially been taking a walk for 45 minutes to an hour every single day. And I am amazed at, some of the things in terms of my energy level, just my overall strength and endurance, not feeling winded, going up to the top of a step. It's just really amazing at how much just that simple walking. And in a 45 minute to an hour time span, I can get, 3 to 4 miles in, going at a, pretty decent pace. So I found that very interesting, in this category of number 1, natural movement. They, they walk to, the store, they walk to each other's houses. A lot of them, I think, tend to be in, hilly regions.
Yeah. So they're lifting, they're carrying things.
Exactly. They're using hand tools in the yard. I think of like even again, Western society, we've got push mowers and riding mowers rather than pushing a lawnmower.
We talk about that all the time. The technology here has just made that was our convenience catastrophe podcast. Is just we're essentially killing ourselves because we made everything so easy to the point that we kind of have taken away the need for our physical being, because And that's, I mean, anyone who's seen the movie WALL-E, that's constantly what I'm picturing, because that's just truly the direction we're going in. We're making movement unnecessary. And I'm not, again, technology, great, love it, like has done lots of good, but...
the detriment to what?
Exactly. Like at some point we will just be... physically, we will be useless if we continue. So unless we find that balance and that way back to, like you said, the natural movement. We talk about that all the time. We are designed to move. You have to move yourself.
So again, I thought that was interesting to talk about the walking or the biking, but again, it has to be this balance, because overuse, running marathons. She waves her hand.
Training for a fight.
Running a marathon. These ultra marathons. We've talked about this in other episodes. That's not necessarily healthy. It's an athleticism, and again, it's an amazing feat, and I certainly want to discourage someone, but doing that over the course of your life has an impact on your cardiovascular system, has an impact on your joints. These
even looking at bodybuilders, we talk about that all the time. Like, there's no question that they have an incredible physique, but at what cost?
At what cost? Exactly. So they're doing these natural movements like walking and biking and climbing, and and doing that, probably an hour a day at least. So I thought that was point number one, the movement. We talk so much about, just movement in general, but of course, we do talk about movement of the spine. And again, when you're walking and the spine is moving freely, I mean, you're getting so much, neurochemical communication up and down the spinal cord and the brain, and how much that impacts cardiovascular and neural health. And all of that's tied in there. And so being first and foremost, the movement that they found, I thought was very, very key. Number two, I know I've had this conversation for years, and we saw this in our grandfather who passed away, but purpose. A lot of times people will lose their sense of purpose in life, and we hear these stories all the time, right? Someone works up until retirement, and then they retire, and then what happens?
Their whole life was their job.
Their whole life was their job, and then what happens? Within a couple months, they're dead. You saw it in the famous Penn State coach Joe Paterno, right? I mean, he worked up until I think it was 79, and he was dead within a year after he retired. And we hear stories like that all the time. So, these centenarians, they had a sense of purpose, and that sense of purpose could certainly change. Your purpose at 20 is not going to be the same as when you're 80, 90, or 100. But you still woke up, each day and had a sense of purpose, whether you were volunteering. Erin, my wife or sister-in-law, just, reminded me of her neighbor who she grew up with across the street, lived to 102. The woman, I think under threat, had her license, was still driving at like 92 or 94. But she was volunteering pretty much up until the day that she passed away, and volunteering at these organizations. And
our grandmother, when they were still down in Florida, would volunteer at nursing homes. She was taking care of people younger than a lot of the people that she was taking care of. So,
exactly.
Yeah,
so
having that
sense of purpose, which is going to lead into another one that I'll talk about in a minute. But having that sense of purpose certainly gives you something to wake up for in the morning. Number three was downshift, which I just thought was such a great way of saying relax, right? Take some time off. And we talk about this in so many of our other podcasts, recovery. I mean, I think that was a recent podcast we did talking about, the recovery time and listening to your body. Well, these centenarians and these blue zones have literally built into their schedules, either on a daily, a weekly, monthly basis, that they are, taking time away from the busyness of life.
And I think that's so important, especially in our Western world where it's just nonstop, go, go, go. I mean, I know I was feeling that this week. Burnout is a true thing. Yeah. And when you're just nonstop, I was going on a couple weeks straight where the only time I was home was to sleep. There was no down, they call it downshift, I call it downtime, but that was truly what I need. Last night, someone's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going home and I am doing nothing. Truly, that was my answer. I am going home and I am doing nothing. And it was exactly what I needed to do. And it's true. You just need that. You can't go You can't go all day, every day. It's not gonna.
Yeah, we look at that, high-end athletes, and I mentioned this before. You look at them; it's like they're not in season 100% of the time. You mentioned bodybuilders. A bodybuilder is not doing a show after show after show. It's like there is time when they are downshifting. They're allowing time for recovery. That's why they have seasons.
Training. Training's very cyclical.
Yeah, it goes in cycles. So, in the same respect, these centenarians have these times of downshifting. So, in some of the cultures, napping. Especially in the Eastern, Middle Eastern, you have the Mediterranean areas, you have these long nap times, or between 1 and 3 o'clock, and
I know we do that over on
every time, absolutely. We built that into our own schedule. Some I did it based on recommendations of previous mentors, but I come to understand why. It's like when you're going, especially when you're caring for others as a healthcare provider, it's like it's really sometimes it's very energetic, and it really sucks. I hate to say sucks the life out of you, but it does. It can be very exhausting. So allowing that 1 to 3 o'clock time where you're recuperating, regenerating. Napping was a big one. Meditation is another way. A lot of these blue zones, some of them get up every day and they do a meditation time where they connect and remember their ancestors. The other is, in the Judeo-Christian world, the Sabbath, right? They talk about, either Saturday for the Jewish or Sunday for Christians. It's like once a week, you are day of rest. You are literally taking a day where you're not connected to technology. Some of the Muslim and Jewish cultures, they don't turn lights on. During that time frame. Again, it's resting. You're not working. You're not doing what you do throughout the other 6 days.
It's not a punishment. It's actually
it's a day of fulfillment. It's a regeneration.
I know in this, again, in our modern world, that sounds like, wait, what? A day?
Yeah, you took Sunday off. Yeah. But even so, think about it. Even with sports activity, kids' sports activities. So much is getting scheduled on Sundays now.
On the weekends. Yeah.
So what are we doing? We're breeding, a whole generation to believe that hey, you can just go. Yeah, you're in school. 8 hours a day. You come home. You go to a sports activity, and then you play all weekend, right? You got a tournament all weekend, and just go. And it's like, and so that gets ingrained, right? And so it's like, well, that's how I was raised. So now, their kids are going to learn the same thing. And so, what we see in these centenarian cultures is like, no, they have built it into their schedule that they take times of rest daily and weekly away from the busyness of life. Really. I mean, and I think we've really tried to do that, in our own schedule. We don't work. We work probably 40 hours a week, and we have times off.
Yes.
So number 4 then is the 80% rule. And one of the cultures specifically, I think it was the Okinawans in Japan, but the 80% is they will eat until they are 80% full.
Oh, okay.
And then that's it. They're done. And wow, I mean, we talk about fasting and calorie restriction all the time, and how much of that just makes sense. They're not eating till over fulfillment to the point of
the Thanksgiving dinner.
Exactly, I gotta unbutton my pants. Yes.
Feeling.
Yeah, they're eating to the point of satisfaction, not over inundation. And it's, again, just that, that little bit of calorie, restriction. Not only does it require an awareness, right, of your own, like, what can I eat to not overdo it, but, again, then there's a discipline to it, right? So it's,
I'm sure they're, I don't know if it went into this in the article, but I'm sure that's also, they're more mindful about, like, they probably eat more slowly.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing, too, is if you're wolfing a bunch of food down, probably everybody's heard, it takes 20 minutes for your stomach to communicate with your brain. So if you just inhale 2 plates of food in 10 minutes, you're not going to know for 10 minutes that you way overate. So that eating more slowly and mindfully is, I know I talk about that a lot, the mindful eating. People are like, oh, do I need to track my calories? I was like, no, you need to listen to your body. I don't care what the calorie tracker is telling you. Your body will tell you.
but again, we grew up in the generation which our parents learned from their parents.
Finish what's on your plate.
Clean your plate, right? Clean plate syndrome. Clean your plate, and oh my God, God forbid there's leftovers. Let's just clean that up.
Yeah, right. That's not worth packing up. That's not worth saving.
3 servings. Let's go eat that. But and that's again that awareness of I remember our cousin Greg, and he's married to a woman with a very strong Armenian background. And when we were having dinner with them one time, he left a little bit of food, in the middle of his plate. And he's like, the Armenian custom is you send that back. And what that tells the chef is that there was enough. There was plenty. There was an abundance of food. I am full. It's just a very thankful. I am very satisfied. Yes. But again, me from growing up in the Western, it's like, wait a minute, that's no, I didn't clean my plate. If I don't clean my plate, the chef's going to be offended.
Well, licking it clean.
Yeah, and again, our mother and father both both good cooks. My wife is a fabulous, fabulous cook. And so again, it's like, being able to say, all right, yes, I can be very, very satisfied and thankful, but I don't have to clean my plate to show my gratitude.
Exactly.
So that was number 4, the 80% rule, eating to, 80% of your fullness and not beyond. Number 5 is the plant slant. So I thought this was interesting because again, big
back and forth debate on that.
Again, constantly going back and forth on how much meat, how much protein, and plant-based eating versus and carnivore diet is now big, and I'm gonna we'll do a podcast on that at some point because again, I do think there's some validity to it, but you have at least in the blue zones and these centenarians, they tend to eat most of their calories from legumes, from seeds, lentils, beans. That's where they're getting the majority of their calories. The ones that do eat meat, some of them are very strict vegetarian, but some of the ones that do eat meat, it's only about 5 times on average, 5 times a month. And when they eat meat, when they do eat meat, it's 3 to 4 ounces. And so I always say, look at your palm or think of a deck of cards. That is your 3 to 4 ounces. And, what's
like an egg. One.
Exactly. Yeah. And what do we typically do, right?
I'm I had 6 eggs yesterday.
And then we go, then you go to a steakhouse and it's like, you get a 20 ounce or 24 ounce ribeye. I'm going to eat that in a sitting. And, that's like 3 months of, worth of meat. So, again, they have this plant slant. Now, again, they didn't say vegetarian completely, but their diet tends to be slanted towards, towards more vegetarian, with meat as a supplement, not the main course.
And then that brings up, something we talk about again, where again, they're probably in areas where they also have access to better quality plant-based foods, because that's the other issue we run into over here. Even, people, it's like, I try to eat the fresh stuff, but even the fresh stuff is, over here you got to worry about pesticides and, the processing and what's happening to our food over here. So and I'm wondering if that's part of where we're seeing mixed results with a plant-based diet is, again, the quality. Yes, I agree. If you're in those cultures where you have access to good plants.
Homegrown.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had some tomatoes from our garden the other week.
Oh my gosh, that was incredible. Yeah, I'm not usually one to just sit and could just eat tomatoes.
I mean, my God, to go out and pick a cherry tomato off the vine and eat it, that taste versus a taste of what you get in the grocery store, where it has almost that waxy film.
Yeah, it is.
And it's been 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes 3 or 4 weeks removed from the vine. There is a gigantic difference in the taste of those vegetables. So, for better or for worse, I never thought I'd be a gardener. I really enjoy it. And I think that probably goes more to that movement, number one, of, just getting out in the garden and,
also with the purpose.
Purpose, sense of purpose.
gives
Absolutely.
you...
Tending the garden. Absolutely. You're feeding yourself, your family, and being outside.
So again, a lot of them, they're probably plant slant because and again, they're plant slant. A lot of, like you said, it's probably they're growing their own stuff or it's within their community.
Correct.
So that's again big difference, and again, it comes back to the convenience catastrophe.
Exactly.
Why it's so hard to be healthy in this society.
Well, the next step is going to be how to figure out how to do that, year round.
Yeah, exactly. We got about one more.
Yeah, we live in a region where it tends to, we don't have that year round.
One more month, then it could be, 9 years snowing.
Exactly. That's the plant slant. Again, we're not pushing one way or another. It's just a matter of this is what they have noticed is consistent across these blue zones across the world. You're going to love this next one.
Oh, man.
Wine at 5. So, and again, this is so funny because a lot of the research is showing that, alcohol is detrimental in any amount. And here we have consistency. All of the blue zones, except for one, there's one called the Adventists in California. They follow a very strict biblical diet, so they don't consume alcohol. But every other blue zone, they drank moderately, which was 1 to 2 drinks, and regularly. Yeah. Almost 1 to 2 drinks a day.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting.
And I've actually seen that research elsewhere where they actually showed with some things like health-related factors that actually moderate drinkers were healthier than both heavy drinkers, but also non-drinkers. Yeah. So I've seen that research has been replicated elsewhere. Now again, they still always put the disclaimer: if you're a non-drinker, don't start. Yeah. There's always that disclaimer because they don't think you have to start drinking because again, you don't want to go from a non-drinker and then trigger something that puts you to the other end. So
you don't want to feel like you need it.
Yes.
But
they have found that that's been very consistent. I've seen through the research. So did you just say specifically at 5?
I think that was just they list it at 5, but you think of it like a happy hour type deal.
So I can have a glass of wine at the front desk. 5 o'clock, guys.
Yeah, we're doing.
Sorry for anybody who comes in after 5.
We're doing shots in the.
I have to have my my wine at 5.
Well, and again, it probably also goes to it because we didn't really talk about it, but back in number 4, the 80% fullness. But the other thing that they found that wasn't absolute, but definitely a similarity is where they would eat the majority of their meals, breakfast and lunch.
Yeah, early.
And then early evening, evening time was a light meal, if anything. And that probably the same thing with the alcohol. It's like, if you are going to consume alcohol, you're going to consume it, several hours before bed.
Yeah, so you don't want to be doing that.
Yeah, so that, your body is able to process it before you go to sleep. And that way, again, we always talk about sleep. That's, where the majority of your healing and regeneration occurs in your body. So, when your body is over inundated with food and alcohol, and then you pass out, and start just going to sleep,
you pass out.
Yeah. We've all had, well, I don't want to say that we all have, but, many of us have had those nights where it's like we drank and drank and drank, and we go to sleep. What kind of sleep do we get? It's terrible, right? Yeah. You're constantly rolling. You're up. You got to go to the bathroom. You're up. It's just like it's not good quality.
It's not restorative.
Yeah, because your body is literally trying to detox from what you just put into it, over the previous day. So so I thought that was very interesting that moderation and regular intake of they say wine, but again, I know the Okinawans say sake.
Yeah, it's whatever.
It's whatever is natural.
Whatever kind of local natural.
What is local and natural? Yeah. Again, that also goes to say, some of the wines are very heavy in fillers, sulfates as a preserve.
Here, you mean?
In the United States, absolutely. And so, those preserves, I
remember when Mom and Dad brought that wine back from Italy. It's like, that quality was just... unreal compared to what we're used to here.
Yeah, so again, that really goes to the natural and what they're eating locally and drinking. So that was number 6. Number 7 was belong. I think that probably ties in very close with purpose, but purpose more from an individual sense. But belonging, 98% of these individuals belong to a faith-based community.
Okay.
It didn't say denomination didn't matter,
Yeah.
but again, it was some faith-based community where they were typically attending some sort of service on a weekly basis, 4 times a month. And I wrote this number down. Each one of these, I think they do list like the possible increase in lifespan, just from an estimate. But that one really stood out to me: 4 to 14 year increase in lifespan from that faith-based community. And again, it was like they were like 263 of them. Only 5 of the 263 did not consider themselves belonging to the community. Yeah. So I thought that was very, very powerful. And again, the actual amount of time that they were able to link that to,
that's incredible.
was really neat. So that sense of belonging, so first you have that sense of purpose, which is kind of like the individual between you and your creator, or you and your self-actualization. But then you have this sense of belonging, this societal, and then that actually leads right into number 8, which is your loved ones. You put them first and foremost. So these cultures typically will have aging parents and grandparents in the home.
Yeah.
You think of what's the recent movie? Well, a couple of the recent Disney movies. Encanto came out recently. Yeah. And what was the other one before that? The Hispanic one. Oh my gosh, I'm going to forget the name of it. Oh my gosh, it'll come to me anyway. But yeah, very family-oriented cultures of you have the parents, the grandparents, the great-grandparents interacting with the next generation.
Yeah, or 2 generations.
Yeah, or 2 or 3 generations, and so you have this sense of
everyone's
community,
taking care of everybody.
Exactly, in the family. So these loved ones are first. That was definitely one of the again, across the cultures, across the entire world, the similarities that you see. And then this kind of, finalized into this number 9, which was this right tribe, was this number 9. And they really specifically used this example in Okinawa. And I remember watching, there was a separate documentary that, because I read about these blue zones years ago, but there was a separate documentary, I think it's on Netflix, or one of the streaming channels. It's called The Okinawa Way. Okay. And I think it's one word, but, it basically talks about the Okinawans and, their longevity. Yeah. They have this culture, this tradition, this practice. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. I should have looked it up. Moais. It's Moais. But that's where children, about at the age of 5, they will be grouped together in about groups of 5 on average. And those are your people, right? Those are like are your people. Yeah. So I'm going to get teary-eyed just thinking about it, because one of the descriptions they said were they would get together daily. This isn't like, hey, we all have our best friends that, we grew up with, and, maybe we don't see them for a month or 2 or a year, and then boom, we can pick up right where we left off. No, these 5 people will get together daily, and, and especially as they probably move more into, the centenarian stage of life, or, probably 90 and beyond, the 5 of them will get together. And if one of them doesn't show up, the other 4, they literally said in the article, the other 4 will put their kimonos on and they will walk over and go check on their friend. And I'm like, how special is that? And that just feeds right back into that sense of purpose, because you belong to, not just a bloodline family, but a friend family. And, so it's like you're living for not just your benefit, but waking up and being there for them as part of that group. They had an example. One of the groups that they tracked, the group was 97 years old. The group was the average age in the group was 102, because they would have been formed around 5 years old. So they've been together 97 years, and all of them still living. That's incredible. That just blew my mind. And again, it just goes back to this: we are communal beings. That's like, I said from the beginning, something like COVID was just catastrophic for our world, because it put so many people in isolation. And that's not how we were meant to live. Yeah. We are meant to live in community. That community starts with your family, but then, beyond that, you can have a certain number of people that you're very close with. We all have those people who, we can pick up the phone and, have a very intense conversation with. But I just thought that there was such a beauty to that, that practice specifically in Okinawa, but I'm sure they have similar, there were similarities in the other Blue Zone cultures. But anyway, that's the power of 9.
And I don't think any of those are surprising. I think it's, like you said, I think they do tie into a lot of things that we've talked about, and it's interesting. I love that it was across cultures, across literally across the world, you see these similarities. And I think, because I do think that's the other thing. Again, I bash on our modern world a lot because like you said, like there's just such beautiful practices in these other cultures.
Traditions.
I just had the opportunity to spend a couple weeks in Thailand, and it was just, everyone kept saying like, oh, was it beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, we were mainly in the city, and I'm like, beautiful is not the word I would use. Incredible is the word I would use. But just being in a different culture, and again, just seeing that how much, not saying that they don't have their issues and sickness and illnesses and, things as well, but just being over there was just a different, you just didn't have that feel of sluggishness and illness that you just kind of feel walking around the streets of America. Yeah, it was just a different energy. Things just kind of felt cleaner and healthier. You felt that sense of community. You felt that it was just, it was just it was really different. And it sometimes just makes you sad to see how disconnected we've gotten over here. Yeah. And again, with the modern world, it's just, you can be connected to anybody and not be connected. So I really like that last one where it's like, think about that. Like, who is your tribe? Who are the people? I don't care if you have 3,000 Facebook friends. Like, do you actually have 5 people that you could really count on?
Yeah, that you could pick up the phone, they would answer it.
So I just think that's something that's so important, and it gets overlooked. And I think, that is such a huge part for health and well-being, and especially when we're talking about that longevity, if you having those people in your life that you can really count on.
Yeah, and again, just looking at that, the graceful aging and the health span versus the lifespan, obviously these are individuals who have done both, right? They're optimizing their life and their time. And it's interesting going over these, as I went through these, I'm kind of like, looking at, like, we talk about the 3 dimensions of health, physical, biochemical, mental, emotional. But if you look at this, how many of these would actually go into the mental emotional? Purpose, downshift, belong, loved ones, right tribe. Every one of those 5 out of the 9, so greater than 50%, would go under the mental emotional. And I always put spiritual in there as well. But that goes to that dimension of stress that we always talk about. The physical, really the only one on physical is the moving naturally. Now,
wine.
Again, that's a big, what's that?
And wine.
Wine, but that biochemical, that could be biochemical. So, you look at, the 80% of the fullness, the plant slant, and the wine, those 3 could go under the biochemical, and then really movement is left over as the physical.
Yeah.
Now again, that physical is a major part of their life because they're moving everywhere. But man, that just, really.
That's good. Well, and again, and it's not surprising that we are seeing,
mental health crises in the Western world.
Yep, and also chronic illness. It is hand in hand. We talk about that all the time with the pillars. You can't ignore that one big aspect and expect, you have a 3-legged
stool.
Thank you. I was thinking 3-peg. I'm like, that's not right. 3-legged stool. Yeah, you chop one of them off, you're done. And I think so many people are forgetting about that one, or again, because we are go, we don't take that time to downshift and to process things. So, but that was
powerful stuff.
Very
right?
powerful. Yeah.
Power of 9.
Yeah. No, that was really, really interesting to hear. And
so that's our take on the Blue Zones. And again, we're going to continue talking about graceful aging, because again, it's something that I think more of us need to be aware of and start thinking about at a much earlier age. We don't want to wait until we are aged before we start thinking about aging. So I think it's going to be very important as we move forward. So if you're someone thinking about your health, thinking about, maybe I'm feeling a little bit older than I should be.
Yeah.
We always say in the office is like, do you feel a decade older? We want to help you feel your age or a decade younger. And again, it's not to say that these people who are centenarians, they probably have their aches and pains.
Oh yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, 100 years of life, it's gonna.
you're gonna feel it, but again, they just have such this beauty in life, that we hope to be able to share that with others, through graceful aging, not the accelerated aging the path that so many of us are on. So if any of this resonated with you, if you're interested in learning more about aging and how to age gracefully, please don't hesitate to reach out. We got so many more podcasts that would tie right into what we talked about today, and we have so much information on our website, Turo, Turo, familychiropractic.com, and we would just love to be a part of your health and wellness journey. I am Dr. Dan here with...
I'm Angela. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
You've been listening to What the Health with Dr. Dan and Angela Toro, brought to you by Toro Family Chiropractic. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.whatthehealth.world.